Imagine. That's kind of what we do every Sunday morning, isn't it? We imagine peace, and we imagine love, and we imagine harmony, and we imagine equality, and we imagine abundance and life. And sometimes we imagine magic. There was once a magician on a cruise ship, and he was actually quite a good magician. Maybe a musician too, but for sure he was quite a good magician. But he had one big problem. His routines were regularly ruined by the onboard parrot who would fly around squawking and giving away his secrets, saying things like, "It's up his sleeve, it's up his sleeve," or "It's in his pocket, it's in his pocket," or "It's in his mouth, it's in his mouth." I don't know, I know that didn't sound like a parrot, but it's as close as I could get. So the magician was getting pretty tired of this and threatened to do physical harm to the parrot if he ruined his act one more time. And then one evening, right as the magician was about to disappear in a puff of smoke for his grand finale, the ship hit an iceberg and sank in seconds. Amazingly, the magician and the parrot were the only two survivors. The magician was lying on a piece of driftwood in a daze, and as he opened his eyes, he could see the parrot staring at him out of its beady little eye. And the parrot sat there for what seemed like an eternity just staring at him, the wheels of his little parrot brain turning and turning. And eventually he said, "Okay, you got me this time. What did you do with the ship?" So for the next several weeks, we'll be exploring magic. Not that kind, but we'll be exploring magic in our lives using the book, which has got a really beautiful cover, Big Magic, Creative Living Beyond Fear by Elizabeth Gilbert. And you may remember Elizabeth Gilbert, who 10 years ago took the world by storm, or at least the Oprah world by storm, when she wrote the book Eat, Pray, Love. And in her new book, she asks us to embrace what we most love and to face down what we most fear. To embrace what we most love and to face down what we most fear. And of course, on this 4th of July weekend, it makes sense for our thoughts to turn to those men and women who 240 years ago faced down fear so that they could embrace what they love. And that's when this was written. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That sure must have been a scary time, right? To these men and women, independence meant being free from an oppressive government. Independence was an ending of the old way and a beginning of a more free, open, self-determined way of living. These men and women were concerned with creating a country where we could be free to seek to improve our lives. And I do imagine that they were heartily afraid at times. I imagine that they had to dig deep to face their fears and muster all of their courage in order to take this step of creating the Declaration of Independence, of signing the Declaration of Independence, and then sending it over the seas, knowing what it would bring to the shores. But this is exactly what they needed to do in order to create a new country, is to overcome their fears and step into this new way of living. Now, I don't know if we're exactly creating a new country right now. Some may say yes, some may say no. But I know that for us in our lives, that for us to be all that we are created to be, for us to have fulfilling, rich, awesome lives, and lots of times we need to step over our fear. We need to move through our fear, activate our courage so we can live the lives that we are meant to live. Amen? Amen. So over these next few weeks, this is going to be a 5-week series, although I wanted to tell you that we will have a break in the middle. We're having a guest speaker from Unity of Miami, a friend of mine, the Reverend Juan Del Hierro, and he'll be here on, I think it's the 26th. 4th, thank you. I don't know why I want to make that the 26th. 23rd? 4th. So we'll explore, with one short break, the attitudes, approaches, and habits needed to face our fears, to uncover our hidden treasures, and to trust the universe, that we can live into our most creative and magical life. Early on in the book Big Magic, Gilbert poses a very important question, and we'll explore that question this morning, and from the book. So this, I believe, she says, is the central question upon which all creative living hinges. Do you have the courage to bring forth the treasures that are hidden within you? Now, I don't know what's hidden within you. I have no way of knowing such a thing. And sometimes you yourself may barely know, but I suspect that you've caught glimpses of what may be hiding within you. I don't know what your capacities, your aspirations, your longings, or your secret talents. But I know this for sure, that there is something wonderful inside each and every one of you, inside each and every one of us. I believe we are all walking repositories of buried treasure. We are all walking repositories. The universe buries strange jewels deep within us all and then stands back to see if we can find them. And there is an ancient Hindu legend about this, and it's about a time when all humans were gods, but they abused their divinity. They so abused it that Brahma, the chief god, decided to take it away from them and hide it where they would never find it again. And where to hide it became the big question. The lesser gods were called into council to consider the question, where shall we hide humanity's divinity? Well, the council said, we will bury humanity's divinity deep inside the earth. And Brahma said, no, that will not do. One day they will dig down deep enough and they will find it. And then they said, well, we will sink their divinity into the deepest ocean. And again, Brahma said, no, not there, for they will learn to dive into the deepest waters and search the ocean bed and find it. Then again, the lesser god said, well, we'll take it to the top of the highest mountain and hide it there. But again, Brahma replied, no, for eventually humans will climb the highest mountain, and they will be sure someday find it and take it up again. Then the lesser gods just gave up and said, we do not know where to hide it, for there is no place on the earth or in the sea that humans will not eventually reach. Then Brahma said, here is what we'll do with humanity's divinity. We will hide it deep down inside the humans themselves. They will never think to look for it there. Right? So, and this is how it's been in my life. Maybe it's been in your life too, right? We reach out everywhere. We read all the books. We listen to all the gurus. We're constantly looking for the new thing in order to help us uncover what is ours, what is our purpose in life, what is ours to do to uncover our creativity, right? And when really all we need to do is to go within, is to connect with our divinity and trust in our divinity and have faith, and then let it express. Back to Elizabeth Gilbert. She says the universe buries jewels deep within us all and then stands back to see if we can find them. The hunt to uncover those jewels, the courage to go on that hunt in the first place, that's creative living. That's what separates a mundane existence from a more enchanted one. She says the often surprising results of that hunt, that's what I call big magic. So let's be clear about something right up front, because I can hear, I have a little thing about reading people's minds. I can hear some of you saying, well, this isn't about me. This is about if you want to be an artist, or you want to be an author, or you want to do sculpture or something like that. It's not about me, but it is about us, because creativity in our lives isn't always about creating what we would call art, what the culture calls art, right? Creative living is about going within, overcoming that fear, and asking the question, how do I live a creative life? What are the treasures inside of me that I can bring out to live a creative life? Right? Aren't you curious about that for yourselves? I'm curious about that for me. How can I live a more creative life? So this is the context in which we work in these next few weeks. Creative living is a life that is driven more strongly by curiosity than it is by fear. It's a life in which we bring forth from us that which brings us joy and fulfillment, and which in turn blesses the world. Right? Let me say that again. Creative living is living a life that is driven more by curiosity than it is by fear. And it's a life in which we bring forth that which is within us, that brings us joy and fulfillment, which in turn blesses the world. Because you can't hide that good. Once you discover it, it comes out and blesses the world. So if you aren't an artist or a singer or a writer or an actor or fill in the blank to what you have previously thought was a creative, this series is for you. Amen? Amen. Gilbert in the book gives an example of her friend Susan, who took up figure skating when she was 40. Well, she had been a figure skater in her younger life and loved it, but she quit the sport when it became clear that she wasn't good enough to do it competitively. So for the 25 years went by and she didn't skate. And her thinking was, why bother if you can't be the best? Then she turned 40 and found she was listless, she was depressed, she was unsettled, and out of sorts. And she asked herself this question: what was the last time she felt truly light, truly joyous, and truly free? And to her amazement, she remembered that the last time she felt all of those feelings was when she was figure skating. And she became curious to see if figure skating would give her those same feelings. So remember that the definition of creative living is being driven more by curiosity than fear, and bringing that within you that brings you joy and fulfillment. So she followed her curiosity to see if it worked. She went and she hired a coach, and she got herself out on the rink very early, 3 times a week, with all of the little ones, with their coaches, and she got over the fear and the embarrassment of being a 40-year-old woman doing turns along with all these little sprites out on the ice skating rink. And she skated just for the joy of it, just for the joy of the freedom and the fulfillment she felt when she skated. And about her experience, Gilbert writes, it was a revolution, a literal revolution, as she spun to life again on the ice. Revolution upon revolution upon revolution. She says, please note that my friend did not quit her job, did not sell her home, did not sever all of her relationships and move to Toronto to study 70 hours a week with an exacting Olympic-level skating coach. And no, this story doesn't end with her winning any medals. In fact, the story doesn't end at all, she writes. Susan is still skating every week because skating is still the best way for her to unfold a certain beauty and transcendence within her life that she hasn't been able to access in any other manner. And she would like to spend as much time as possible in such a state of transcendence while she is still here on earth. That's all. That's what I call creative living, she writes. Isn't that beautiful? It's so simple, isn't it? It's so simple. You know, when Ross and I and Sophia moved here to Stuart, Florida, I hadn't been riding a bike for a very long time, right? And, you know, so we bought nice bikes for ourselves. Well, Ross kept his old bike, but Sophia and I bought nice bikes for ours. It's a nice, yeah. So I would take myself out on my bicycle, and it's actually a cruiser. It's 7 speeds. And so here I am in this, you know, generously speaking, middle-aged body. And I'm going up the bridge and down the bridge, and I'm huffing and puffing, and I don't know what the heck I look like out there on my little towny bicycle, but doing my riding. And every once in a while it would cross my mind, oh man, what are people thinking when they see me? You know? And then it occurred to me, none of my business. It's none of my business what anybody is thinking of me. As I'm feeling this freedom, as I feel this aliveness when I'm out on my bike creeping up the hill, I feel that. So that's a way to be creative in our lives, To remember that what anybody else thinks about what we're doing is none of our business. Right? That when we stand in integrity in our creativity, when we have the courage and the curiosity to take the first step into something that is alive in us, something that maybe has been buried for years, and we take that first step, that's absolutely freedom. That's absolutely creativity. And that's what Elizabeth is calling us to do in this book. It doesn't matter how old we are. It doesn't matter what we look like. It doesn't matter, and none of it matters. So here are some of the ways that we might be stopping ourselves from doing our creative living. You're afraid, she says, this is a list from the book, you're afraid that you won't be any good at doing whatever is nudging at you. You're afraid you'll be rejected or criticized or ridiculed or misunderstood or worst of all, ignored. You're afraid there's no market for whatever you are offering and therefore no point in pursuing it. You're afraid somebody else already did it better. You're afraid everybody else already did it better. You're afraid your dreams are embarrassing. You're afraid that you'll look back on your endeavors as being a big giant waste of time, effort, and money. So I have something about that. In my life, and in my creative life, I have had many hobbies, right? I have had many hobbies. I have been a knitter, a crocheter. I have been a scrapbooker. What else have I done? I was a soap maker, and what else? Beads. I did so many creative things. I still have some of those things. Yeah, that's pretty cool, huh? That the husband remembers that.
I have to move the boxes every time you move.
So once a girlfriend said to me, "Wow, you kind of go from thing to thing, right?" And yes, I have spent some money on going from thing to thing, but I'll tell you what, that's my creative nature. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? When we do one thing, we do that creatively for a while, and then we pick up something else, and we go back to that other thing. And that's the flow, the ebb and flow of creative life for some of us. I spent a lot of my life saying, I'm not creative, not an artist, Wrong. I am very creative. And I ebb and flow in my creativity, and maybe that's what it is for you too. There is nothing wrong with that. Is everything right with that? Because that deepens our experience with life. That deepens our creativity. It deepens our ability to go out in the world and look at things with a new eye when we have that experience of using our hands and using our hearts to create our life. But I got really sidetracked there. So a couple more things. You're afraid you don't have the right kind of discipline. That could fit in to what I was just talking about. You're afraid you'll fail. You're afraid your best work is behind you. You're afraid you never had any best work to begin with. Afraid you're too old, afraid you're too young, afraid you're a one-hit wonder, and then there's much more in the book. So I'm going to quit listing it because you know what? It's a bottomless pit anyway. Right? Because what Elizabeth is telling us in this book, that when our creativity comes up, when we get that spark of something that we want to do, what happens for most of us, if not all of us, is that fear is right behind it. Fear is right behind it, and then we start with all of those reasons why not. We start with all of those reasons why this can't happen in my life, why I can't be fulfilled with this. She says this in the book. She says, fear is really boring. It never changes. It never delights. It never offers a surprise twist or an unexpected ending. And she says we're all equipped with the same basic fear package. There's nothing interesting, compelling, or original about it. On the other hand, the creativity that we have within us, it's all original. It's all original. Even if you say that your art is reminiscent of someone else's art, it could never be exactly the same as someone else's art or someone else's life or someone else's creativity. She says, do we really want to build our lives around the most boring instinct we have? But knowing that doesn't mean that fear will go away. Truth is, we do need fear in our lives, right? Fear plays an important role in our lives to keep us safe from danger, from actual danger, but we don't need fear in the realm of creativity. So what do we do when the fear comes up? We notice it. We notice our fear when it arises, and we make a conscious choice to let it go. It's really powerful to make that conscious choice to let it go, to look fear in the eye and say, you have no power over me. I release you and let you go. I am willing to step out in my courage and to do what is mine to do. So remember, I invite us all to remember that we have treasures hidden within us, extraordinary treasures. And bringing those treasures to light is what you came here to do. And your clock is ticking, and the world is spinning, and you don't have any more time to think small. It's what God wants, God in you, and God as you wants. So I affirm that. I affirm that for each and every one of us, believing that we have the courage to not only discover our creative life, but to act on our creative life. And I affirm this truth for each and every one of us. And so it is.